going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Matthew Putterman. I am here with My MMA News. I am alongside mixed martial arts journalist and reporter of My MMA News, John Eric Poli. How you doing today, brother?
I'm good, my man. Thanks for having me on again. I really appreciate doing these fight breakdowns with you. And what a great time you're breaking down fights. The trilogy, it's here. It ends tonight, and it's going to be a great night of fights. I'm looking forward to seeing it, man. How about you?
Yes, sir. You already know. Today we're going to talk about the co-main event. We're also going to talk about the main event, of course. The co-main event is Sean Sugar O'Malley versus Chito Vera in a highly touted bantamweight bout that's going to be huge, especially the rise of Sugar Sean O'Malley. And then, of course, in the main event, we have Stipe Miocic fighting Daniel Cormier in the trilogy, the best heavyweight trilogy of all time, in my opinion. So let's start off with this. What do you think about Chito Vera versus Sugar Sean O'Malley?
Well, I think this is a big step up for Sean O'Malley. I know we've been waiting, to see him get his first real big opponent. And, this is it. Vera's he's nobody's fool. He's going to come out there and he's going to compete. And he does a fantastic job inside there. Really, in his last fight against Song Yadong, I thought that Vera actually won. And I know a lot of other people feel that way too. Ultimately did go down as a loss on his record. But, hypothetically saying if he really did get that win, which myself and many other people believe, that would be 6 fights in a row that he would have won. Instead, now it's 4 of his last 5. So Vera's nobody's fool, like I said. I'm interested to see, can Sean O'Malley elevate his game? Can he beat one of these bigger opponents and get himself now into this the top 15 here? Because I believe Vera's number 14. And I'm interested to see what he could do inside there. How about you? What are your thoughts on it? Looking at it as a first glance.
Yeah, when I first saw this fight was announced, this fight was supposed to happen back a while ago, but Sean tested something with the USADA pool, the tainted supplement. So now the fight's actually happening, which is great to see. Sugar Sean O'Malley is one of the hottest prospects in MMA right now. There's no doubt about it. He's got the flash, he's got the flair, the personality, the crazy hairstyle, as we've seen now. He's a great fighter. He's gonna be good, and I think he's only 26 years old. I think the time off for him during the tainted supplement with USADA has really evolved his game, especially his ground game. And for Sean, he's so comfortable on the feet. He's able to judge distance very well for a guy that's long and lengthy at 135 pounds. And I think he's like 6'1", super long and lengthy. He's gonna give a lot of guys problem in this bantamweight division, especially with his striking. And he's got very good fight IQ for a guy at 26 years of age, and it's seeing where he can go from here on out. If he gets a huge win over Chito Vera, even if he stops him, that puts him right in the top 15. And there's a lot of big fights out for him. Maybe even Cody Sandhagen that just lost to Aljamain Sterling's there. There's a bunch of fights at 135 pounds for him, and he's one of the most he's going to be one of the most accomplished fighters, I think, by the end of the year. He's going to keep pushing and pushing, and we could definitely see him in the top 5 by the end of the year, or maybe even early next year with his rise and his fighting style as well, too. But Chito Vera is no slouch. Like you said, he would have been on a 6-fight win streak, but of course he lost to Song Yadong. Again, it was a close fight. I thought Song maybe just pulled out a little bit, but it's just one of those split decisions that you never know can go either way, really. But Chito Vera is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. We're going to have to see Sean's ground game. If Chito can get it there. I believe Chito trains with Eddie Bravo at 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. So we'll have to wait and see if Chito's able to get it to the ground. But as seeing Sean evolving over the past few years, I think that he will get the stoppage tonight. I think he can get I don't know if it's going to be a first, second, third round finish, but I think he will get a finish at some point during this fight. So what do you think? Do you think we're going to see a finish tonight?
Yeah, well, before I give my prediction too, I just want to touch quickly on a couple of things that you brought up there that, that I absolutely agree with. I thought you made fantastic points there where you were talking about Sean O'Malley's length and how he uses his reach. It almost kind of reminds me of, and I was putting him up into a big category, but we saw at 145 pounds when Conor McGregor was there, and then most recently with Max Holloway. Those were 2 guys that knew they had a long reach advantage and were bigger for the division, and they knew how to use it correctly, and they knew how to land their shots. And I see a lot of that out of Sean O'Malley so far. And the other thing too that I wanted to talk about too of what you brought up was with Vera striking as well. I know you gave shout out to Eddie Bravo, but he also does his boxing training with Jason Perillo, who's an amazing coach. Of course, he led Michael Bisping to a world title. Chris Sidebourg's coach as well. So Vera does have great coaching underneath him there. So I think that helps make this an interesting matchup as well. As to how it goes, though, wow, this is. I think Sean O'Malley definitely gets it done. I think that the stock is definitely there with Sean O'Malley, and I think that people should start buying into that. I don't think if he wins this fight, they should necessarily rush him too far, let him get ranked. And I was going to say maybe something like a Cody Stamann, who's kind of ranked in that within the top 10. And Stamann's a good wrestler too, I think, which would also help test O'Malley as well if he wins. But first, he has to get the job done tonight. Will he get the finish, though? That's a very good question. The way he punches you and the way he hits you on the chin makes me want to believe so, yes. So I guess for the sake of this making prediction, I'll go O'Malley by a finish as well.
Yeah, definitely. I just the way his striking style is really, really smooth, and it's like a new era. It looks like of striking for a guy like that, and it's gonna be a great fight, regardless of who wins. It's gonna be a great fight. I just see Sean being able to judge the distance well and be able to use his hands and be able to get a knockout here, I think. And but that's how I see that fight going down. It's a great fight, and then we'll have to wait and see. I don't want to rush Sean O'Malley. He's super young. Like you said, if he can get in at least the top 10, like a Cody Stamann or anybody like that, I think that's a good way to test Sean even more and see if he's for real, even more so now, which I believe we'll figure out tonight if he's for real. So, but moving on, we are going to be breaking down now one of the biggest fights in UFC history, the trilogy of Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier. Man, what a crazy fight. The first two fights, Daniel stops him in the first round, and Stipe, the second fight, stops Daniel in the fourth round. And now we're looking at the third fight. How do you break this fight down? They're 1-1 in this trilogy, or 1-1 in this, and we'll figure out tonight who's the baddest man on the planet.
Yeah, talk about a hard breakdown here of how this is going to go down. Honestly, when I look at it and just trying to call it straight and try to not look too far into anything, I honestly think that Daniel Cormier has more ways to win the fight. First off, he said smaller cage, he's going to be able to use his wrestling a lot more. And don't get me wrong, Stipe, which everyone forgets, Stipe was a Division I wrestler himself. He wrestled at Cleveland State. So it's not like he's going to go out there and make it easy for Daniel to, take him down. Daniel's just not going to go in there and ragdoll him by no means. But obviously there's a wrestling advantage there because Daniel Cormier did represent this country in the United States by making the Olympic wrestling team. I forget the year off the top of my head, but he was an Olympic wrestler. He definitely has the wrestling advantage. And the thing is, though, when Daniel does get you down, he's able to do a lot of things. We've seen him work his ground and pound very successfully, but we've seen Daniel submit a number of guys, and even at heavyweight, like he just submitted Derek Lewis in his only title defense at successful title defense at heavyweight. So not only that, though, as far as the ground game goes, when you look at the stand-up, the first fight, I thought Stipe was doing a very good job, but then Daniel turned the page half of the first round and ultimately got the knockout on the feet. This last fight, while it was very close, very competitive, Daniel was still outlanding and outstriking Stipe on the feet. So you have to look at that as well. So, again, I think that there's more ways for DC to win. Here's the only problem with that, though. You don't want to stand up with Stipe Miocic because he'll knock you out. We already saw what he did to Daniel the last time. So that's what makes this interesting. It's a heavyweight fight. Anything can happen. But when I look at this fight, I just feel that there's more. And I'm not even saying necessarily that DC is going to get the win, but there's more ways for DC to get the win, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, most definitely. Stipe is he's probably one of the best heavyweights of all time. If he wins tonight, that solidifies him as the best heavyweight of all time. Like you said, the more I feel like there's more ways to win for Daniel Cormier than there is for Stipe Miocic, especially with the smaller cage, like you were saying too. But I think that Daniel Cormier, I think he was doing well in the second fight too. Like you said, he was outlanding him, he was outstriking him. And then Stipe was able to make an adjustment in between the rounds and was able to move his head more and being able to go to the body against a guy like Daniel Cormier opened up that body shot for him, and he was able to get the finish there. But Stipe Miocic even his grappling is good too. I mean, he takes on Francis Ngannou. He's got a lot of good. He's beat a lot of great guys in this division, and he's probably the best heavyweight of all time right now. But Daniel Cormier, if he can go out on top, winning this trilogy, that just solidifies himself as one of the best pound-for-pound fighters of all time, if not in the top 5 for sure. But I think Daniel's wrestling is definitely give Stipe problems, especially early on. If he can out-grapple Stipe early on and be able to wear Stipe out, get him tired, I think he can pull out the victory, maybe even the submission too, like you were saying. He's got a few submissions. Like Anthony Rumble Johnson, he submitted. He also submitted Derek Lewis at heavyweight. So I just think Daniel's grappling is going to be a little bit too much for Stipe Miocic, but you can't slack on Stipe Miocic because of his striking as well too, and he's got great takedown defense. But I think I'm gonna go with DC. I think DC, like you said, just has more ways to win and is going to be able to get it done by using a lot of his wrestling. And I think we see a new heavyweight champion, and Daniel Cormier ends out on top here. And if he wins, the UFC is going to throw a lot of money at that guy, because there's one other guy that I guarantee he wants to face again, and that's John Jones. If we could see John Jones finally move up to heavyweight and fight DC, I think that would be a huge fight. If not, Stipe wins, I guarantee John will go up and fight Stipe for the heavyweight title and see if John Jones is a legit heavyweight or not. I think he could be, for sure, if he puts on the right size. He's a bigger guy for 205 pounds, but he said he's making the weight cuts easier now, so we'll have to wait and see. But I think that I'm going to go with Daniel Cormier. I think he'll go out on top, and I'm going to go by a submission, actually.
All right, I like where you're going there too. Yeah, like I said, I think that that DC, like I said before, has more ways to win. So in terms of, I know you want, we're supposed to be making predictions. I'll go DC. I'm gonna go with the decision this time. I think maybe they ride it out. We saw 1-on-1 with the KOs there. I think, no, why not? Let's see a 5-round affair, right? Just to be different. I know nobody else is calling it for that, but yeah, again, DC has more ways to win. But I would just say for anyone that's watching this, that's winning, if they're looking at what we have to say to go ahead and place their money as last second bet, this one's very close. Again, there's more ways for DC to win, but that does not mean anything, because again, Stipe knows how to grapple, like we just said. He's a Division I caliber wrestler as well, and again, he knows how to knock guys out. He already knocked Daniel out once. He's confident he's going to do it again. He said that his biggest thing is he needs to start out faster this time. The last time it took him a couple rounds to get going. So if he starts out faster, is that going to be a huge benefit to Stipe? There's a lot of question marks that are still, even though these guys have already fought twice, we still find ourselves here at part 3, like, oh, geez, I don't know. Anything could happen in there. But that's the beauty of watching heavyweights fight. And, if it's anybody's first time watching a heavyweight fight tonight, because I know that more people have just started getting into watching the UFC during this quarantine, they are in for a treat tonight, because these are the 2 baddest men on the planet, and probably the 2 best heavyweights to ever fight in the sport of mixed martial arts.
I agree 100%. And I think the way that DC will win is, in the first fight, he was able to clinch with Stipe a lot and was able to not expose per se, but was able to land a knockout inside the clinch, on exiting outside the clinch. And I think if Daniel can go to his bread and butter there and be in the clinch with him and able to land bigger shots in the clinch, I mean, he could definitely knock out Stipe again with that. But it's a pick. It's one of those hard fights to pick. But if I want to go with Daniel Cormier. But I do love Stipe Miocic. I think he's a great fighter too. Either one, whoever wins, is going to be great, because I want to see either one fight John Jones at heavyweight. So I'm going to go with Daniel Cormier here by submission. I think he's going to wear out Stipe in the later rounds, and I think he's going to be able to get the submission victory here and go out on top.
And Matt, one more thing too, because I know we're going to be moving on to a little bit of the rest of the card here. Just that one last thing before we move on that I wanted to add. Daniel Cormier, win, lose, or draw tonight. I think we have to talk about his legacy, and I just wanted to say that, first off, he's one of the best to ever do it. We have to give credit where credit is due. And first off, he was the champ and multiple title defenses at 205 pounds, which, as we all know, is really the glamour division of the UFC. From your Chuck Liddells and your Tito Ortizes to John Jones, and obviously Daniel. That's always been one of the biggest, probably is the biggest division within the sport, especially in the UFC. So Daniel ruled over that. He became a 2-division champion, of course, when he beat Stipe at that time. And not to mention, before he got into the UFC, he actually won the Strikeforce Grand Prix. And at that point, there wasn't a lot of stock in him. He ended up going in as an alternate and running the table there. And up until he lost to Stipe, he was unbeaten at heavyweight. He has one heavyweight loss, and that was to Stipe Miocic. So from what he's done in those 2 weight classes, yeah, I have to give him credit with his legacy. But the other thing, too, is him as a broadcaster. What a fantastic job he does in the broadcast booth. He's a great commentator. He makes it easy for people, especially when it's the first time watching a fight, the way he explains things. He's obviously was involved with the UFC when they were on Fox. He was on the desk there. Now he does the stuff for ESPN as well. So his legacy is more than just what he did inside of the cage, but his legacy also carries outside of the cage as well.
100%. Yeah, he's one of the best. As you can see, a lot of active fighters love doing commentary now. I mean, Michael Bisping, when he was champion, Rashad Evans, Tyron Woodley, Paul Felder. I mean, it's just great having people that are actually active or formerly active in the sport and have fought many of times, being able to break down fights in a different manner that we don't specifically see. We obviously aren't in the cage fighting like those gentlemen are or did. So I think it's a great thing for them he's a great guy on the booth, and I think we'll definitely see him on the broadcast, win, lose, or draw. He's still going to be there. He's still going to do it. So it's great seeing a guy like that being able to do that and break down this sport we love so much. So
yeah, man, definitely. I think we definitely hit the nail on the head with that one. And like I said, win, lose, or draw tonight. DC was definitely one of the best to ever do it, and best of luck to him and whatever he decides to do in the future. He deserves his retirement. He deserves to ride off into the sunset as one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, is there any other fights on this card that you're looking forward to? The fight stands out or just overlooked as of right now because of the co-main event?
Yeah, so I know obviously people have been on the main and co-main event, and for good reason, and that's how usually all the fights are. And then usually there's another one that sneaks in there, in which this case has been Junior Dos Santos and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And believe me, I get those 3, but really the fight that kicks off the main card is the one that has me really excited to see what's going to go down here, because you have John Dodson taking on Merab. And we know the hype behind Merab, a product from Matt Serra and Ray Longo. Little tough go to start off his career. He's now won 4 in a row. He's on the rise. He finally cracked the top 15 rankings. There's a lot of hype behind him. But you also have John Dodson, who people are like, Dodson's not the same that he used to be. Maybe his best days are behind him. And you look at his record, it's kind of been like flip-flop over the past few years. But then when you actually look at his record, which I didn't realize, so I was looking up, stuff before we came on here, and I was like, oh, wow, look at John Dodson's record. Loses by split decision to Marlon Morris. Oh, okay, well, Marlon Morris is only the #1 contender in the world right now. He almost beat Henry Cejudo. He was on a roll there, so he completely just ran out of gas. Then he had a win in the mix. I forget who was on top of my head, but then he fought Jimmy Rivera, who, again, one of the top bantamweights in the world for good reason. That fight was very boring, which I hate to say, but it was really was a snooze fest, and ultimately really could have went either way. But again, he lost that one, which was a very close fight. Then he loses to a guy by the name of Petr Yan, who's only the sitting world champion right now. So this guy has been around the block. He's fought a lot of good opponents. When you look at his record, you're like, oh, he's only 2-3 in his last 5 fights. He's going against world-class competition. So this is a huge step up for Merab. I think in a way this is Merab's are you a contender or pretender type of a thing, which might be a little bit steep given where they're at in the rankings. But this is a huge step up for Merab tonight. And if Merab could get the win, I think Merab's going to be in the same boat as Sugar Sean O'Malley, where he could go and make a run within the division, because John Dodson, like I said, when you look at that record, he's had a lot of good opponents that he's gone through recently.
Yeah, most definitely. And he's a former title challenger too, twice. So, I mean, fighting a guy like Demetrius Johnson, who's pound for pound probably the best fighter of all time, seeing that and seeing him now at 135 again, he's got one over TJ Dillashaw, former two-time bantamweight champion. He's got a lot of ways he could win this fight too. Like you said, for Merab, seeing if he's a pretender or he's a contender, it's one of those fights. He even beat someone I'm very close to, Rafion Stotts. He also beat him. So there's a lot of good fights. This fight especially is one that stands out a lot too. And we're going to see if John Dodson still has what it takes to be a contender here at 135 pounds. And, with a win over Merab, if he does get the victory, maybe wait for him and TJ Dillashaw. I know TJ Dillashaw comes back next year, I believe. And what a fight. We could see that again. I know John won by knockout in the first fight. But maybe seeing that being run back now, where they're both at in their careers, would be good. It brings back the old memories of Mayhem Miller and Michael Bisping, the Ultimate Fighter. So maybe we'll see that there. But the one fight that stands out to me the most, or one of the fights I feel is overlooked, is Herbert Burns versus Daniel Pineda. I mean, Herbert Burns, he's a great fighter too. That's the younger brother of Gilbert Burns, who's the number one contender at welterweight, of course, right now. And you have Daniel Pineda, who's fought in Bellator. I believe he's fought in World Series. He's fought in the PFL, I believe. He's fought everywhere. He's fought a lot of good guys. He's actually fought one of my close friends, Emmanuel Sanchez, back in Bellator. So it's when I saw this card and I saw he was on there, I'm like, wow, okay, he's in the UFC now, and it's crazy to see where he's fought over the past few years here and where his career was, and then go back up again. So. I think that's one fight that I feel like is going to be slept on a little bit due to the guys that Daniel Pineda's fought. And I think that's going to be another fight to look out for, especially.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree on that one too there, because you're looking at Herbert Burns, who's realistically still technically an up-and-comer. I know there's a lot of stock behind him, and for right reasons. He's another guy that's very big for 145 pounds. He just missed weight actually earlier this week, but he has a long reach for that advantage as well. And if he could ever, learn how to use that the right way and everything, he could definitely be a force to be reckoned with, and maybe follow in his brother's footsteps. And then you have Pineda, who's an absolute veteran of the sport, been around for a long time, and he's seen it all inside there. So it's interesting to see, can Gilbert Burns also put himself in the position to start rising his stock and elevating as well. And then just one last one for me too that I'm also looking forward to, just in case there's anybody out there that's a big fan, they maybe won't be able to afford the pay-per-view or won't be able to see the pay-per-view for whatever the reason may be, and they'll just be watching the fights on ESPN tonight. But in the main event of the prelims, Jim Miller's fighting, and it's going to be yet another record-breaking performance for Jim Miller. He currently has the most fights in the UFC, so he'll extend that record. And a win tonight, I believe, ties him with Donald Cerrone with 23, which would be the most wins in UFC history if, of course, he could get the win. So, great card from whether you're looking at the prelims or, of course, the main card. We're in for a great night of fights.
I agree, brother. Yeah, it's going to be a great night of fights. I can't wait. Only a few hours left. So we'll get this video out for the fans and all of our friends and family that want to see this, man. But if you want to go ahead, my man, feel free to shout out Instagram. Let them know where you can follow you, YouTube, anything like that. My brother, the floor is yours.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, in case no one can see the TV behind me, I'm not sure if it's how blurred out it is when you see the reflection there coming in, but it's at John Eric Poli on Instagram and Twitter. On YouTube, it's John Eric Poli as well. But, usually if you go to my Instagram or Twitter, you'll be able to find my YouTube accounts, because I usually do a pretty good job of sharing out my content whenever I put it out. So those are my two main spots that you'll want to, take a look at me if you want to follow me. So if anyone follows, I appreciate it. And of course, Matt, I appreciate you. I really appreciate the time. And I just wanted to say, I saw the video you posted on Facebook there. You better watch throwing those leg kicks there. You're going to be in the UFC next day. They're going to be recruiting you.
Yeah, maybe. No. It's, just trying to train. That was actually from months ago. And I forgot I had that video on my camera. And, for us as being journalists and reporter for this beautiful sport of MMA, I think it's definitely necessary for us to at least have a better understanding of what the fighters go through on a day-to-day basis, how their training is like, because I feel like we aren't giving them enough respect that they truly do deserve. And, this sport's not easy. These guys train sometimes 3 to 4 times a day. and their fight camps could be for 8, 12 weeks, anywhere in that range. And it's a huge respect to all those fighters that do this. Amateur, professional, it does not matter if you have a losing record. It doesn't matter. They have the cojones to step in there, unlike some of us that want to just sit back and just obviously view the sport in a different way. That's why I love being able to see this sport in a different aspect and be able to break fights down much differently from a fighter's perspective. So trying to see what the life of a prize fighter really is. So I love it. I love it. So.
Yeah, man, you do a great job too with doing everything too. You know, I appreciate the fact that you go out there and that you you put yourself in those shoes there, and I appreciate all the content that you put out as well on your YouTube channel as well. You do a great job all the way around, man. You're a lot of talent, and it's great to be sitting here spending this time with you.
Thank you, bro. I do appreciate that. Same back to you. Well, definitely. I hope you have a great rest of the day, man. Enjoy the fights tonight, and I hope you stay blessed, and thank God for another day.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that, and same to you there. God bless.
Yep, sounds good, brother. Talk to you soon.